Hey guys, Norioka here, back with yet another video on an Interceptor build. And I would also like to point out, yesterday I dropped a video about an acid build. Acid is indeed physical. Um, I had some misconceptions about it, and I would like to thank Noble216 for, helping me clarify all this. Acid is physical. For any acid increase damage, you want physical. So I just want to put that out there. But nonetheless, we're going to go into this build that I was just kind of playing with and kind of had a lot of fun with it. And this is what I've dubbed the Optimus Primer build. And the whole idea behind it is that your entire playstyle revolves around just priming everything. Priming as much stuff as possible, getting those dots, and then just using your melee to proc the combos. And it actually seems to work really well. I do have some solo Grandmaster 2 contract play, and then the mission sort of bugged out and kind of kicked me, so I didn't bother going back in, but it does kind of have a very interesting and unique play. It's not very burst, it's more of a sustained damage build, and it's also really nice if you're running with a squad that has just been running a ton of detonators. I'll show some Grandmaster 1 farming in Temple of Scar that actually kind of showcases it pretty nicely, and we absolutely decimated stuff. Especially because you can kind of change how the gameplay runs about it with what elements you're priming. But for the most part, I kind of went for the more damage route to keep some sustained damage on it and also help increase damage for everything overall. So, nonetheless, let's get into it. So, for my assault systems, I was running Serpent's Veil, the Venom Bomb. The main purpose of this is obviously it's a great means to spread acid effect to a large group of enemies. It's, obviously the best way to spread acid. It's just very, very good. And, it's just it's a good ability. You can hit many targets with it. You spread the acid debuff, instantly to everything. Uh, and you're just causing everything else to do increased damage. So this is the one thing in terms of this kind of overall rotation that you want to be constantly using to make sure that you're spreading acid to as many things as possible. But this is more of a priority rotation, or it's more of just like keeping the dots up, kind of how this build plays. So you want to throw your Serpent's Veil on as many targets as possible. And then as for your strike system, I was using Karif's Talon, the detonating strike, or what they still have in here as the sparkling spear explosive, which essentially increases, you're doing some electrical damage. So now you have an electrical primer, which is really nice, especially because if you, kill that enemy or, detonate that lightning, it does a massive radius of damage, and it's so nice. This build exceeds at clearing trash. You just absolutely decimate all the trash around you, and it's kind of awesome. Just kind of, it's kind of a trash clearing build for sure, but it does do decent damage against bosses. It's nothing like the burstiness of some of the other builds, because you kind of have to sustain your debuffs. And sometimes that can be difficult. But for the most part, it's pretty easy to keep up. Like especially when you have like the gear charges. The nice thing too is that restoration and health makes this a very, very tanky build as well. So it's a fairly safe build. Continuing on with weapons. So on ending battle, I was kind of running with. I might vary some things up. So for instance, I might run Siegebreaker. I was going to try that out a little bit to see for that freezing of the target, because that could be actually pretty good. Because then you essentially have all three elements added to it, and then that's you're actually maximizing your ability to prime everything. some of the other things, maybe just getting like a nice like Truth of Tarsus to, you know, you're already setting off all these primers, you can combo with that. That's another thing you can run. And honestly, I would like vary between these, but if you want to be the ultimate primer, you got to throw on that Siege Breaker. And then the other thing you would need is the Roundnear's Blaze, and this is how you get the fire damage added to your build, because fire is obviously the only thing Interceptor can't do in terms of a primer. And this actually does really good damage. It's actually got a really good roll of 21% damage to the Javelin as a whole. So it's actually really, really nice. I was having a lot of fun with this, being able to spread fire and do that much more damage. And essentially, because you're spreading this, because you have all these primers, you're really good at dealing with shields with your lightning and ice, and you're really good at dealing with armor with your fire and acid. I was just seeing that I was shredding through some of the enemies with just dots. You know, I didn't have to, you know, essentially do a lot of things in terms of setting up for like a really powerful sudden death. You know, that Tempest Strike, getting those really powerful hits with that, or, you know, setting up a Spark Dash or something like that. Any one of those big hits that require a little bit of setup time, I didn't really have to worry about that so much. With this, it was more, you know, oh, just make sure you have your, you know, the primer up on everything. The nice thing, too, with this is you kind of get to control your aura. So if you're in a scenario where you need a Frost Aura, because it'd be nice to freeze all the mobs around you. You know, pop off that Siege Breaker, get those few hits, freeze the target, combo. If you are looking to get the, like, Ignite out, and you want a Fire Aura, do a lot of fire damage, you know, burn some of the health, that's really good, too. If you want to look to spread your acid even to higher potentials, if, you know, you maybe, like, are killing a, like a single or a few people in one area with your Venom Bomb, but you know they're going to die quickly and you're going to go to the next area, you can carry that acid with you. And then obviously if you want the lightning, you can do that as well. And you know, that will help deal with shields. So there's a lot of variations you can do with this. And it kind of makes it fun just being able to prime everything, and, you know, it's I don't know, I've been kind of enjoying it. It's been fun, and it could also be I'm just enjoying it because my Javelin looks like a play toy out of fucking, like, it's just ridiculous. It's all heavy cloth and all the most neon colors there are. So it looks ridiculous. But anyways, in terms of skills and priorities, I was thinking about messing with this a little bit, but haven't gotten too much into it, because I've just been liking having the all masterworks. It's not the highest damage, I know, but it is the safest. Sometimes when I'm running Grandmaster 1, maybe I'll swap in double-edged inscription, say for instance on anything like yeah, I mean, like maybe Talisman of Power. Like most of my two abilities, my two systems don't really do a ton of damage. The Detonating Strike is the only one that kind of does any sort of kind of burst hit that, you know, it does around like 7-8k if I recall correctly, in terms of the initial hit, and then you spread the electricity, and then if you kill the target and detonate the electricity, you do a huge AoE. That can chain, by the way, so that gets really fun. If you have a bunch of low packs, you can just kind of chain explosions and see stuff melt. That's why this is great for trash. But yeah, I mean, you could, in lower gameplay in GM1, if you're just farming strongholds, you can absolutely drop down, especially because this is one of the safer builds anyway. So you could drop down to that epic double-edged inscription, increase that damage, and take that increased damage. So, but like I said, I always kind of just like running full masterwork, as the survivability is just, it just seems really important to me, at least in my mind. it just seems like something you'll always kind of want, you know, essentially having those abilities to, the ability to, you know, make a misstep and take a hit and be like, all right, I'm fine, I don't have to worry about this. Wave integration, I mean, the acid damage is doing, you know, a good bit, but also the main thing is just getting that hit streaks. This is kind of a trash dealing build, so, you know, why not get the, you know, 30% increased damage for 5 seconds, especially when it's so easy with, you know, how much of your, you know, abilities are AoE for the gear here. Conductive lattice, obviously, for the electricity damage. It does really good burst when you, you know, detonate them. And also the gear cooldown is really nice because Karif's Talon is not a very short cooldown. You know, it's considered one of the longer cooldowns of the Interceptor. It's about 11 seconds if I recall correctly. So, you know, getting that reduced is really nice, and then also just getting that detonating electrical explosion at the end of every melee hit just adds a good bit when you're, you know, in the fray and you're doing some melee attacks just to proc your combo. Always, like, so I've been kind of debating on whether I want to do this, because a lot of times you're just using the melee to proc the combo, so you might want to swap Way of Resolve for maybe Way of the Bolt. This would make it even tankier and also increase that kind of aura strength, which, you know, is good if you're doing a lot of elemental damage. You kind of want to do sustained damage. It's pretty darn good. And it'll be nice to kind of like spread everything and do some increased damage. Then finally, Way of the Swift, just to increase that assault system, but namely to also increase that the detonating strike, that and, you know, it's not a massive, it's not as, you know, as massive as, say, if you were doing with sudden death, you know, but it's still a good bonus to it. And, you know, I personally, I've been running with this, and it's just been kind of like a very nice, relaxing GM1 gameplay, and it seems to kind of be, I mean, pretty darn fun. I mean, I kind of really enjoy it. Having the ability to kind of prime everything just seems so fun, especially with, it seems like a lot of people are running detonator heavy builds because they want that burst damage. They want that ability to just kind of like burst. At least in a lot of what I was playing, I have just seen so many people running kind of detonator primaries. That being said, so some of the inscriptions to look out: you want any sort of elemental damage that applies to any of the elements you're running. Overall elemental damage is great for everything but the acid. The acid is indeed physical, so any physical damage will improve that. But the acid is kind of just more as a means to increase your damage across the board with everything else. Any overall damage is really good. So, for instance, with my Rauner's Blaze, that 21% damage is just overall to the entire javelin, and it's actually really nice to just have like a flat 21% increase on a weapon. Because honestly, you can use weapons as a stat stick, so you don't actually need to, like, you technically don't need to actually use the weapon for actual damage purposes. You can kind of prioritize it based around your build. If you get really good on something that's going to increase your build damage by, you know, overall 20%, or, you know, even increase your ultimate damage by 30, and, you know, like, you gotta play your weapons to the build, especially as an interceptor, because sometimes you find yourself never really using your weapons all that much. That being said, in this build, you kind of use them all the time because you're trying to prime. And obviously, you're going to be using your target beacon. And obviously, ultimate damage and speed is always nice for an interceptor. And getting that shield can kind of be really helpful for just, you know, tanking some of those hits. As for kind of the specific system inscriptions that you're looking for, obviously elemental damage will be good for your Karif's Talon. And then it would also be good to have gear charges on the Karif's Talon, since it is that long cooldown. And then always looking for that pickup force and luck roll. As for your assault system, it doesn't really matter all that much, I would say. Namely, charges would be nice for the Serpent's Veil. Charges is just always a nice thing to just have the ability to hit more, proc that wave integration more, and just spread that acid damage more. You could technically also try Cryoglaive with it, and maybe swap out the Karis Talon for Venom Spray. The thing I want to focus on this build is kind of just overall priming as much as possible. And the Venom Spray doesn't it does 15 asset status, so its ability to spread is not as great as the acid bomb, and its radius is not as large. So with that being said, I'm gonna leave you with a little bit of gameplay, and I hope you enjoy. Hey guys, so here's a little bit of the Grandmaster 2 gameplay. There's a few minutes of this, and then I go into the Grandmaster 1 kind of farm on Temple of Scar. Just to give you an overall sense of how the build kind of plays. It's not the best at kind of dealing with those bigger mobs. The fire and acid actually helps out with the health, but it's not as bursty as some of the other builds that an Interceptor can run do. It's more of kind of like a overall sustained damage, as well as just setting up, kind of whatever primer you want for the build. In this one, I'm running the Unending Battle, but then the other one, I will run the Freeze Sniper. So I hope you guys enjoy, and if you want to, if you have comments, leave them below, or if you want to come check me out on Twitch, feel free to stop by. I'm more than happy to talk and chat and theorycraft about all the different Interceptor builds. You guys have a good one.
But my brain tells me I've been here before. Don't wanna draw any attention to all the crazy things that I shouldn't mention. Not really sure, but it feels like my feet are glued to the floor. Don't wanna open up my mouth, 'cause I'm afraid of what's gonna come out. Life is but a dream. This can't be happening. Wake